Hello, my name is Laura Ward, and I'm the manager of psychosocial services here at Hospicare. It's been just over a month now since I gave my first Facebook Live talk to introduce the series Grief and Wellness in Uncertain Times, which featured myself and many of my wonderful colleagues offering tips and resources for coping during this pandemic. We have been so grateful for all the wonderful comments that you have left. People have been in touch to let us know how useful the videos have been, and we really love to hear your thoughts. Please keep sharing these videos with anyone who might benefit from more resources for coping at this time. Because of the positive response we received, we have decided to start another series called Tools for Connection and Wellness. This series will continue to feature members of our interdisciplinary team providing tips and tools for wellness. The new schedule will be Tuesdays at 10 for a longer 15-minute program, followed by a 5-minute breath break on Fridays. These relaxing breath breaks can help people reduce stress and boost their immunity. Today, I'm here to talk about mourning from afar. And this talk applies to anyone grieving the death of a loved one during this pandemic, regardless of whether the death is related to the novel coronavirus or not. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives dramatically in so many ways, and one particularly difficult change is the way in which we grieve the death of our loved ones. When a death occurs, we have a specific way of responding based on tradition, culture, and our religious beliefs. Immediately following a death, people bring food or flowers to the home of the bereaved. Friends and family are quick to offer to care for children, run errands, and help plan a funeral or memorial service. Hugs and just being in the presence of our loved ones provides physical comfort. Our support system mobilizes. Many cultural or religious beliefs provide us with a ritualized way to mourn. In Muslim communities, you have to wash the body and prepare it and bury it quickly so the soul can rest. Christian and Jewish traditions call for close proximity with the dead in order for those left behind to comfort their loved ones and to confront the loss. Events such as repasts or Shiva allow survivors refuge in their communities. In some cultures, those close to the bereaved will take turns sitting vigil with the family for days or even weeks after a death. During this health crisis, social distance has made it so that people are unable to grieve their loved ones in traditional ways. Without these rituals and without the opportunity to be in the presence of the person who has died, see the casket, and be around other people grieving the deceased, it can be harder for those grieving to make sense of the loss and eventually accept that their loved one has died. Having traditions to follow and a set of rituals enables people to integrate the loss into their life. Without this element of face-to-face support and left alone in quarantine, people experiencing losses may suffer more due to the isolation necessary for social distancing. We do know that social isolation has been shown to prolong grief. On top of that, we know, and we've talked about this before in my previous talk, this is a really stressful time for people. People are experiencing many losses beyond the death of a loved one, including the loss of their job, savings, sense of identity, and more. These stressors can get in the way of us grieving normally, and also, those who would normally be supporting the bereaved may be overwhelmed with these challenges in their own lives and less available emotionally to support the bereaved. On top of that, people are overwhelmed with fears about contracting the virus or losing more loved ones to COVID-19. We know that when a death occurs, that we have a really strong understanding of the fragility of life. And so when people experience the death of a loved one, whether it be to coronavirus or not, they're more aware that life is fragile, and that can increase those anxieties and fears related to the COVID-19. These feelings can be all-consuming, and they can prevent people from acknowledging their grief and making space for it. Sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed with other stressors, we don't have the emotional ability to make the space for our grief. Delaying grief is not healthy, and it can lead to long-term physical and psychological challenges. So instead of holding grief in, we need to find new ways to go through the grieving process and say goodbye to our loved ones within the limits of social distancing. Most importantly, you don't have to be alone. It's important to avoid withdrawing from friends in your grief, even though we can't support each other in person at this time. The best thing we can do when we are grieving is to reach out as much as we can to family members through phone calls and video platforms. Friends and family can gather via chat conference to talk about their lost loved one, share memories, or simply cry together, and know that they're not alone in their grief. Sending emails and letters to people in your network is another great way to take part in the collective grieving process. So many times I've had clients talk about these letters that they receive from people all over, which include personal stories or experiences of their loved one who's died. Many times these are experiences or stories that they've never heard before, so it brings a lot of comfort. Some families I've talked to and friends or groups of friends have started text chains to check in and share memories or thoughts of the deceased. And that can go on for a long time. Just how are you doing today? The key is to talk to someone about your feelings rather than keep them bottled up. It's important to find connection in whatever ways you can. Being intentional about the emotional bonds that are still present can provide us some comfort. It's not the same as being able to hug or sit together in close proximity, but the virtual connections can be a way in which the emotional connections can be expressed where we're at now. If you lack the motivation to follow through on connecting, which is common with grief, try to book times for phone calls and video chats. Arrange these conversations as appointments that you must keep. Agree on times with people in advance so you're more likely to follow through. Of course, choose to connect with people who provide healthy support, are responsive and flexible about your needs. The amount of contact we need and want can vary when we're grieving on a daily basis or even an hourly basis, and it's helpful to connect with those who are understanding of this. Now, we know that funerals and memorial services are valuable both on a practical level to provide structure that give people tasks and a way of coming together to grieve, but they also provide confirmation of the body through being able to view the body and grieve in community. Physical touch through hugging our loved ones is especially healing. This coming together in the form of a memorial service or a funeral empowers social support and connection from the very beginning of our grief, reassuring us that we're not alone in our loss. Celebrating a loved one's life in a public setting with others is a very healing part of the grieving process, knowing how important and special that person was. But right now, with social distancing and stay-at-home orders, means many families must delay memorial services for an unknown amount of time. The uncertainty of when they might be able to honor their loved one in this way can be difficult and anxiety-producing. Recognize that this is temporary, and although there's a delay, these services can still take place, and it's important that they do. It's going to be extremely important that when this is over, people have a chance to come together and grieve their loved ones who've died during this time as a community. And it can be comforting for people to think about these services as being delayed rather than being canceled. Although it's not easy, and certainly we wish they could take place right now, just the idea that they will eventually take place can be a comfort for many people. Depending on where you live and how you've been social distancing, you may be able to have a small service with immediate family. And there are other ways, and ways to include others in the experience. Many funeral homes are really working on this now and trying to be responsive during this pandemic. We've seen live streaming of graveside services or larger interactive virtual funerals on platforms such as Zoom. And you might want to check with your local funeral home to see what kinds of things they offer. Sometimes immediate family can attend the burial process following the CDC recommendations of 10 people gathering in a small space and staying a distance apart, while other mourners can drive through in their vehicles in a parade, staying in their car while offering their respects. Other funeral homes have offered drive-through windows with a video of the person on a monitor, or in-person visitations with 2 people allowed in at a time, disinfecting between visitors. One benefit of virtual funerals is that people who might ordinarily not be able to attend the funeral now can because they live far away, but anyone can attend virtually. Sometimes even finances can get in the way of people traveling to funerals, and of course some people have discomfort with grieving in public. Now they can participate on their own terms. However, this virtual process won't work for everybody. Some are not comfortable with technology or just don't have the resources to access things like that. So it's helpful to think about virtual funerals and perhaps maybe what are the virtual options now until we can have the kind of funeral or memorial service that we want in the future. It's unclear when we're going to get back to having traditional funerals and grieving rituals and when that's going to be an option. But it doesn't mean that it's impossible to process our grief and move forward in this uncertain time. Recognizing your feelings of grief, loss, and sadness that are really normal is super important. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Identifying and acknowledging any feelings that might come up for you. Let yourself move through them. It's really important to allow yourself to feel your grief and not to keep it bottled up. A wide range of emotions, and I talked about this in my first video, is totally normal during grief. People often describe it as a roller coaster. So the ups and downs, feeling all kinds of different things. Expressing whatever comes up can be helpful. Also, writing out your feelings can be therapeutic, and you can do this in the form of a journal just for your eyes only, or you can channel that into writing a tribute for the deceased that you can share with friends and family now on social media platforms or by email or on a virtual online memorial. There's lots of those as well. Or you can save it for the funeral that will happen down the road. It's helpful to remember the times you spent together, think about those memories, and share those, again, on a virtual platform or just writing them down for yourself. Sometimes people find comfort looking through photos, and this is a common thing that you might do if you're preparing for a celebration of life. You might put together a photo slideshow, and so you can still have that process, looking through photos, make a photo show that you can either share again online or at a funeral in the future. Music playlists. Other people really enjoy making music playlists and sharing those. So think about what are some ways that I can celebrate the relationship I had with my loved one now and really honor their life. Another thing that can be healing both for adults and if you have children or adolescents involving them is to do activities that will help you to process your grief through art, such as you can make a memory box, draw, scrapbook, create a piece of art for your loved one. Also engaging in rituals. People find a lot of comfort by planting a tree, lighting a candle, cooking their loved one's favorite meal, anything that will allow you to express your grief now. It can be really helpful to actually generate a plan for coping. Really think about what are the things that I've done in the past that really work for me in difficult situations. There's a lot of things that you can still do now. You may not be able to do all of your usual coping things that you do for coping, but you can still do things like read, take a bath, go outside, exercise, eat healthy, nap. And you might find it useful to just make a list of these things that you can fall back on. It may be also helpful to think about how your lost loved one would want you to respond in these circumstances. People have used this exercise to generate ideas about, how they might cope, and also recognize that right now during this pandemic, we're often stuck inside. We have less to distract us. So it might be a time where you really find that you are lost in your thoughts and feelings. And I talked about this again in the first video, is just distract yourself. Sometimes when you find yourself just needing a break from that, everybody needs a break from grief. What can you do to kind of mix it up or distract yourself? Do something that you enjoy. And also recognize the impact of the stress on your grief. So moderating your news intake and just being gentle with yourself around normal fears and stressors that might be happening related to the pandemic. If more support is needed, reach out to the professionals. There's a lot of grief support that's being offered online by many hospices and mental health professionals, including HospiceCare. At HospiceCare, we offer both individual and group support in an online format. And you can find out about those events on our Facebook page or on our website. As you know, this series is meant to provide resources and tips. So all the videos that we've done in the past are listed again on our social media sites and as on hospicare.org/blog. So you can access those resources for ideas and tips about coping in general. Number one, make sure that you're connecting with your community of grievers so that you feel less alone. And connect with the people that you need to in order to stay healthy. Doctors are seeing people via telemed. So if you're having any physical symptoms of grief, it can be good to check in with your doctor. Grief is hard and it's a different experience for everyone. There's no right way to do it. Practice self-compassion, allow yourself to have a good cry, and take good care of your mind and body during this challenging time. I realize that grieving the death of a loved one during this pandemic is not ideal. And so I hope these tips provide you with some ideas about how you may cope with knowing that there is a community that supports you and that you will come together with those who also love this person to celebrate their life at some point. So thank you for joining me today. We're going to be doing a 5-minute breath break on Friday, and then we'll be back here again for a longer program on Tuesday. I hope you'll join us for these live videos or watch them recorded, share them with your friends and family, and give us any feedback about things that you might want to see as part of this series. Have a great day.